Hi there.
Hey. Okay. So we're on a college campus, and I know one of the things that Ecker students love to do is get involved, to be politically involved. And after doing a little bit of research on you, we found about the fact that you were engaged in some civil disobedience at Boston University. You were arrested. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And can you give us give the students any advice for civil disobedience and how we get engaged in that?
Yeah, so I was involved in a number of movements on campus. I was active in a free speech movement that was tangential to the anti-apartheid movement that was going on campus. And then I became more directly involved in the anti-apartheid movement. I was also involved in the movement around the persecution of Jews in the Soviet Union at the time. It actually helped a woman come to the U.S. I was going to an event around the Soviet Jewry, and a professor of mine came up, a geography professor, and said, hey, can you talk to my friend? And her mother, she was from the Soviet Union, her mother had not been able to leave, and they were trying to get her out. The Soviets were preventing that from happening. I actually went on this congressional lobbying thing, and she was ultimately released as a result of intervention of people, including Senator Leahy from Vermont. Again, I was involved in this free speech issue at BU. We ultimately had to go to a court in Massachusetts to prevent from being expelled from dorms for putting what were called signs, posters, and banners in our windows, which the administration did not like. We won that. In terms of I became very active in the divestment movement on campus around apartheid. We ultimately tried to build a shanty town around the student union building, which prompted the police to show up. There's, I'm sure, the NBC local news video of me lying under the front wheels of a police car to prevent my fellows from being taken away. Of course, I was ultimately taken away too when you do that. Suspended for an indefinite period of time. I think they said a semester, but I think it was probably an indefinite period of time for Boston University, which is how I ended up back in Vermont, back in a small town, in an area where there's more cows than people, wondering what I was going to do, until I met this guy who was running for governor, was mayor of Burlington, Vermont, and I drove him around in an ill-fated gubernatorial campaign in 1986, and here I am. And that's a short story of my life. But I have to say that college for me was a real awakening, and a real awakening about the impact you can have for people who are not from your community. Who are not, like, I'm not Jewish, I'm not black, I'm not South African. But that doesn't absolve me and others of responsibility to speak up for communities that cannot speak up for themselves, or to work with people from those communities to help them achieve the kind of equality and equity that they deserve. So I encourage people to be involved. I am a proponent of nonviolent expressions of civil disobedience, certainly not a proponent of any kind of violent action. And but I think it also has to be strategic. And I've always tried to be, when I was an activist and engaging in student activism, trying to be strategic in order to get the goal that I wanted. It was always about the result as opposed to the action itself. Right? The action was a means to an end. So